I am waiting for Myrna to let me know that we are turned appropriately, and then we are going to get started on this map again. So I am in the middle of a beautiful winter morning. I wish everyone could see the color of the sky where I am right now because it is the most amazing shade of blue. And I just am having one of those incredible mornings where everything seems like it's just going my way. The world is beautiful, the coffee is the perfect temperature. I just got some amazing news that I've literally been waiting 7 years to get, and so it happened like 10 minutes ago, and I just feel effervescent. So that is super exciting for me. Myrna says we even got the camera orientation right the first time, so hooray! So yeah, I'm today feels like a party. And if you're here, I'm really glad to have you with me. So the map that we're looking at right now is a map that I'm working on for Dexter. We connected in one of my mapping groups, and this is a map for his project. I'm super excited to be working on this because it just feels really amazing to be involved in a map where I'm talking to the creator a lot and kind of discussing things and getting to know more about the world as I go along. This one has had a false start. We had to begin it again, so I'm feeling a little bit of pressure with my self imposed deadline because I am behind, but Dexter is fortunately and graciously not mad, so we're going to go with that. I'll give you an example of what went wrong. I think you can see it in the camera. So, do you see these little speckles that are happening in here? And over here in this corner, in this one line, that was just the worst. This happened because I was working and my beautiful dog, who I love so much, decided to put his ball on my desk and it knocked my water glass from dealing with the watercolor on this map, which caused a spray. And whenever you're working with watercolor, as soon as you re-wet it, you reactivate the paint and it pushes out what was underneath it and creates a new thing. I'm not entirely convinced that this was a bad thing, just in terms of adding texture to the map, but it wasn't the effect that I was going for to give to Dexter in the end. So I actually may end up playing with this a little bit on my own, just to see what I can do with it in terms of mark making, because that may lead to something really interesting in terms of textures down the road. There's an artist who's local to me named Justina Smith. I follow her on Instagram. I've also been fortunate enough to take classes from her, who does some really fascinating stuff with Japanese tissue paper and many layers of ink and paint. She doesn't do maps at all. She does like portraits of people's pets and landscapes and stuff like that. But I've been thinking about trying to incorporate some of her style into what I'm doing as well. So I think playing with that a little bit over Christmas could be great. I'm just looking for the pen I was using. I thought I had it. Did it get under the speaker box? Nope. Okay, well, we're gonna make do, because that's what we do. So I'm going to be mousing a little bit during this episode because I have Dexter's reference photos up on my computer. So I'll be going back and forth between the chat with Myrna and the photos that I'm using for reference. She's monitoring the chat, so if you have something to say that you want to give me feedback or ask a question or whatever, she's going to let me know that you've said something. I'm still trying to work out the process of making myself able to watch the YouTube chat and deal with everything else that I'm trying to do at the same time. So let's get going. So I have a tendency to work counterclockwise as I go around a map. The reason for that is if I'm working in a wet media, I'm less likely to run into myself and create smudges. That's not a problem when I'm working in ink, but it is with certain other things, and it's just a habit I've gotten into. So we're going from here, which is down near the town of Lugden, up into this area. And so I have some knowledge that this is the Snowtop Mountains. There's a couple other ranges in here. There's a giant lake here. And then this is a forest. So we're going to start in this area, and then as the time goes, we're going to keep progressing. So yeah. I've been getting a lot of requests for knowledge about how to do my mountains lately. So I'm going to draw a few and kind of give you an idea of what that looks like. I think I've covered it in another live stream, but hey, more is always better, right? So the first thing about mountains is deciding kind of where your range is and what direction it's going in. Typically when I do a range, I go in this direction, but geography means that they can be zigzags or they can go this way. It really depends on what your tectonic plates are doing. Following the template that I have, the range is going up and to the right this time around. So the first thing that I'm going to do is establish a ridge line. And the ridge line basically keeps everything organized. So when you're creating the momentum of it, you have an idea of what needs to connect and where it needs to connect. And that will help keep everything organized. So I have one major ridge line that's going this way, and then there's a couple splinter branches that are going off to this side. And then what I do after I've established the ridge line is I block in where I want to start putting my shadows. And usually the way that I do this is to add kind of a jagged line anywhere between 1/3 and 3/4 the way up the face of the mountain, depending on what I think is warranted for that shadow line. I don't know if this is easy to see compared to all of the distance with the camera, but I'm doing my best. So when I put in my shadows, I want to pay attention to each peak as I'm going along. So like, for example, this has 1, 2, 3, 4 peaks. So I know for a fact there's going to have to be 4 shadows that I'm working in here. So I tend to make kind of a lightning bolt shape. I just like how it looks. And they're not always huge. Like this one comes down maybe 1/3 of the way to where the ground would be, which is down here. It just kind of depends on feeling. I know that's kind of sounds like an excuse, but the more you do it, the more you understand what you want to get out of it, and then you can just keep going. So once I've created this kind of lightning bolt shape, what I'm going to do is come back into it and always choosing the direction that I want, and that's to keep consistent with the rest of the map. So you can see that I have the shadow on the left-hand side of all of this mountain range. I want to make sure I'm continuing that over here. I come in and I start sectioning off this lightning bolt shape. And so I'm putting in a line kind of at each point, usually at the lower points towards what would be the left of my page here. And I'm just creating blocks. And the way that this came about was I was doing a lot of reading on the stained glass work that Louis Comfort Tiffany did, of the Tiffany jewelry store fame, I think in New York. And the thing about stained glass is you get that beautiful heavy black leaded glass outline, and then it has all kinds of detail within each of those panels. And so that kind of inspired the way that I'm working on these mountains, in that each of these sections gets kind of blocked off with a heavy black area, and then I fill them in with hatching. And the hatching can go pretty much in any direction that I want. As long as I find they need to go in different areas to kind of create that contrast and give you the sense of motion that really seems to come through in this technique. So I just go through the range and I block out each of these areas and I fill them in with the hatching until I have the left-hand side of my range completely shaded in. And that doesn't typically take too long. I mean, the sections that I'm doing aren't huge, which helps. So then you get these shadows. And that looks kind of vague right now. So what I tend to do once I've blocked that in is I come in with a thicker black pen. This one is the, let me see if I pronounce this right, Furunosuke brush pen by Tombow. I really like it because it's got a quite flexible tip, so I can go from very thin with it to quite thick. And I just reestablish that original ridge line. I make it thicker. I point out like where my peaks are and trail it off so that that tapers. That'll reintegrate itself into the landscape as I go. And sometimes I want to just establish that there's other little ticks and ranges coming down. And what that does is it really makes it pop on the page, and it kind of just clarifies everything to the eye, because otherwise things can get a little bit muddy in terms of, hey, you know, what am I looking at? This can get a little bit confusing. If it's not reading as clear enough to me, sometimes I will also come back and I will just thicken the zigzag lightning bolt line, just to create a little bit more drama along that. Part of this is because if you're studying shadows, whenever you have an object that is throwing a shadow, let's see if I can get a good example here. Can we see that? Not really. I think because my light is just too overhead. When you're throwing a shadow, say it's a sphere, you're going to have a ring that shows up on whatever surface depending on where your light is. And the outside edges are going to be probably the darkest, and then there's actually going to be a patch of light that's in here. And that's because it's light reflecting off your object and then back into the bottom. It's frequently very, very subtle, and it can be difficult to see depending on your lighting conditions, but in a really strong light, it's going to show up. So when you're casting light, I'm trying to create that darker edge on this ridge line, and then just hint at the reflected light that might be coming back on to the other side. That was one of the most useful things I learned in a class that I took. It's really helped me add some verisimilitude to the rest of what I'm working on. So then I'm just going to come up here and I'm going to repeat that process with the peaks that I haven't done yet. So I'm going to add my lightning bolt, make my decisions about where I want all of that to be, and then I'm going to go in and section it off and put in the hatching on each ridge. And I find now that I've been doing this style for a while, I have an idea of kind of what pattern I want my hatching to have, and I keep it fairly consistent just because it helps create rhythm to the eye within the piece, keeps things looking fairly harmonious. So then I'm going to go back in with my thicker pen. I'm just going to tuck in those darker lines, which has that benefit of cleaning everything up and kind of establishing a focal point for your eye to be drawn to. And I'm just going to tighten up the edge of the lightning bolt. And that gives us a mountain range, which is pretty tidy. So I know for a fact there's a smaller mountain range over here based on the drawings that I was given to work from, so we're going to put those in. And what I want to make sure that I'm doing is I've got a landform ridge here and here, so I want to kind of keep that on a continuity, so that it makes sense that we have a plane of focus, of vision to work from. So we'll put a rough outline in there. I'm going to keep this one really mild and more like a hill. So when I bring in the hatching, I'm actually going to curve it up to this top point, which will give the impression of a hill coming down this way. And then I'll hatch this side, which will give the impression of it being steeper. And then on this side, it's going to be a bit more of an aggressive elevation. So we're going to put in the lightning bolt and put in a little one at the top here, another little one here, and just fill in the hatching back and forth as required. Bring in the black pen. There we go. So we have that. So one of the things that I want to make sure that I'm doing is kind of grafting these things together. So we're going to add some hills. So when I'm doing my hills, it's the same thing. I've got a line that's tapering off from this particular part of the mountain. So I'm going to reinforce that. And then I'm going to use that to kind of generate the next hill, just for that continuity. And typically when I do my hills, I just create these kind of half-finished ellipses, not ellipses, ovals, I guess, to kind of give that sense of roundness and that sense of scale. And then depending on the geography, I may add other details to it. So for the hills that I have down here, there's some additional ticks that are going on. and there's other texture like stippling. We just got a request for the map to be shown a little more close up, so for sure I'm gonna do that. Myrna, just bear with me, it's gonna be a shaky camera because the rig I've got going on here. David Wilson says, came here from Facebook. Thanks for posting that I was live. You're welcome. I strongly prefer doing this for other people to hang out. So let's do a quick fly over here. So this is kind of what I mean about doing the, where's my finger? The heavy black line on the ridge line and within the sections. And then, can we focus, camera? You can do it, I promise. There we go. So you'll see that I have some areas that are bled over onto that. These are going to be repaired with gouache afterwards, which is an opaque form of watercolor, and that'll allow me to build those back up into that area. It's really difficult unless you have meticulously pre-planned your map, which some people do, and hats off to them, to have everything masked in with liquid frisket before you start drawing. One day I will have that skill, but I do not have it at the moment. So this circle is where the compass rose for this map is going to be. So I realize that looks quite jarring with the lack of heavy geometry going on in the rest of the map, but that's the plan for that space. So bear with me. I will get this resituated. All right. And I think while we're wobbling things around, I'm going to take another sip of coffee, if that's okay. Because, you know, coffee, it's the elixir of the world. All right. Oh, and we just discovered that I can see the chat on my phone if I look up. Cool. Hi, guys. The problem will be looking up at this point, but like, wow, that's really neat. I'm excited. David, thank you for saying that it's fun to watch me work. I've had some real nerves about sharing this process with people. I live in a really small town. There's not a lot of other artists here, so it's tough to kind of create a community and have people to hang out with. So it's nice to have the potential for doing this online where there's other people that are interested in what we're doing and we can talk and hang out. And that's kind of my intention with this, is like, bring what you're working on. We'll do art together because I think that's cool. Gary is asking, do you alter lettering style much for maps? No, I don't. I am blessed with having really decent handwriting, which is the benefit of many years worth of work, taking beautiful notes in school. But also, I don't do a lot of lettering on my maps. This is actually one of the very first maps where I have spent any time at all labeling things, and that was at the request of Dexter, who wants them labeled for his purposes. Labeling can be really, really time consuming, especially because I'm working quite small. Like, this is a 0.05 pen, so to write neatly on a rough toothed paper with a very, very fine nib is a challenge. And if I get it wrong, or I get the spelling wrong, or anything like that, it can undo tens of hours worth of work, depending on how far into the map that I am. One of the particular challenges with this map has been that Dexter had it originally, he's from the Netherlands, so I think it was Dutch, and then we're translating to English. So some of these words are unfamiliar to me, other ones are, you know, made up in a true fantasy fictional style. And I wanted to make sure that I was getting them right. So just going slowly and being super careful. But honestly, I strongly prefer not lettering, and being able to do it perhaps in Photoshop after, just because in case there's an edit, right? Like, it's a little bit terrifying. But on that note, let's put the Ramses Bridge in here. Helena, I'm really glad that you like the mountains. I really dig them too. It's been a lot of fun. All right, so Ramses Bridge. accent there. All right. So we've got that. David, I totally hear you. Finding community can be so tough. Although if you're the parent of several kids, then you know what? You have a little community. It's just whether or not they're giving you what you need all the time. Question, are the rivers splitting? Yes, they are. I don't necessarily understand the process of that. Like, this isn't a world of my designs, so if we wanted a response as to why or how, then that Dexter would be the one who would want to answer that. If Dexter, if you're around and you have input on that, that'd be super great. Let us know. If you put it in the comments, then people can see and Myrna can let me know. When I'm working on someone else's map, I don't take responsibility for making sure that their geography is perfect. The reason for that is I don't know what perfect means in their setting. Whenever you're dealing with science fiction or fantasy, if you're not intimately familiar with the thought processes of the person who has done the project, you may not understand the general mechanics, the effect of magic, the effect of technology in their world. And I don't want to make presumptions about something that is going on when that may not, in fact, be the case, right? That would just be incredibly arrogant on my part to assume that I know better than the person who's commissioned the work. If I don't understand something, then I will ask, like, absolutely, because I want to also make sure I'm getting it right. It's no good to anybody if the map is ultimately not usable at the end. So, doing on that. How's the sound for everybody? Like, I do have a fancier mic, but I have yet to develop the technological acumen to bring it in. I'm planning on it. It just is one of those things that, if you know me, you know that I'm intimidated by technology a fair amount. Hence the reason I'm doing all of this by hand, as opposed to, you know, one of the common, like Incarnate or GIMP or something like that. So let me know if it's something that you can hear me well or something like that. I'd like the feedback. Alright, so I'm just putting some texture into the hills. And what that's doing, these little ticks are creating more of the elevation. So the lines that are going around are giving us the roundness of the hill, and the ticks are giving us the sense of going up. And I'm making sure that I'm keeping the majority of these lines on the left-hand side. So the impression is that the light is coming this direction. So all of our shadows on all of our things are going to be on the left-hand side of them. And this keeps the map harmonious and it makes it consistent, which is part of selling the believability, even when you have geographic landforms that don't make a ton of sense. So we're just going to keep all of that tight and all together. So we're going to put in a little bit of forest because this is going to be a part of this mountain chain and this side is heavily forested and there's some forest going on down here. So I have a tendency so far to draw all of my forests as tiny pine trees. I find the process incredibly relaxing because I'm one of those people who's a sucker for punishment and I get off on hatching and pointillism. Part of it also, though, is I have a hard time drawing deciduous trees. Like, I have yet to find a leafy tree shape that really works for me. Whereas the pine trees as a coniferous tree are instantly recognizable. People understand immediately that I mean a forest. I think we also have associations with pine trees as somehow like more mysterious and more fantasy based just because they're darker. I don't know. Part of it also is I'm a child who grew up really close to the Canadian Rockies, in the foothills of those incredible mountains, and I grew up in forests of 100-foot tall lodgepole pine and enormous ancient spruce. And so for me, these are also the trees that are familiar and comfortable, and I love them. Like, I'm very passionate about forestry and just how that sense of place. It's funny because I never understood how much I loved the trees of where I live until I moved away. I went to live on the Canadian prairie where there were no trees visible for miles. It was really, really something. So when I'm focusing on putting my trees in here, I'm focusing on keeping them kind of in the valleys of these hills and at the base of the mountains. And that has to do with theorizing about where the water runoff is going to be in this area. You're always going to have more foliage in areas that have more water. It's just kind of a truism, and as far as I know, that's true for this world as well. So, going on that theory. And I don't want to crowd this too much. There wasn't an indication of thick forest in this area, and it's a bit more sparse down here. So I'm going to keep it pretty loose and easygoing, because we know there's a denser forest up here. So one of the reasons why it's important to know that there's a denser forest up here is that you want to keep a ratio of light and dark balance in your map. You don't want your eye to go to any one place because it's so dark, and you don't want a white area to let your eye just glance over it because it's too disconnected to the rest of your world. So I'm trying to preserve that and keep it in mind as I work along, which is sometimes a challenge, but for the most part it's pretty good. Oh, David, yeah, Jasper, right? Like, oh man, it's absolutely incredible. It's my favorite place in the entire world. I have been so fortunate to be able to go pretty much every year since I was a kid. I am somebody who gets incredibly rejuvenated by being in the mountains. There's just something, it's as close to church as I get. I have nothing against church, but for me, it's being outside. So I love that place so much. There's a lot of beauty to be found everywhere. Like, I lived in Saskatchewan for just about 7 years. And the first year that I was there, I was in Regina. It was really distressing. I had never been in an area that had such a huge sky. Like, I don't know if that makes sense to anybody who's never been like by the ocean or in an area where there's no tall trees or no hills or no mountains, but it honestly felt like at a certain place in town, the gravity just, you could see out of town and the gravity stopped working to me. It looked like everything had just flown into space, got sucked into the sky, and it was honestly so disorienting. It was scary because I'm used to a very crowded horizon, these incredible trees and these massive hills. For the first year, I was uncomfortable, and it was something that I hadn't expected to experience. But by the time I left, I love it now. Like, I love my mountains and my trees just as much, but there is so much beauty in a wide open prairie sky now that I'm not terrified of it. I miss it sometimes. We go out back a couple times a year because we have friends and family there. And it's a relief to kind of hit that point in the highway where you're like, yeah, you know what? This is good. And it feels a bit like home because I was there for so long. I was there for just about a quarter of my life. And that's kind of lovely in its own way to think about it. Yeah. So sorry guys, I wax poetic. It's a thing that I do. So we know we've got a giant map going on over here. Or not map, dude, we have a giant map. This is what I'm working on. We have a giant lake. So one of the things that I do when I'm working on lakes is I want to try and make sure that this edge is occluded by any landforms or vegetation that are in the area. Because that way it just helps with the isometric view of this being the bottom and this being the top. Which is why, like, you put your trees in the front because it's helping you kind of build up that illusion of things becoming taller. So I start, like, I have this roughed out in pencil. Can you see that in the camera? Barely, hey? So the shape of this is roughed out in pencil. And I'm going to follow that with the trees that I want in that area. And I'm going to use these trees to sculpt in the shoreline and create the edge of that. And what that's going to do is just help it look consistently like there's forest there and it takes on the natural landform of what's going on around it. I want to be respectful of the edge of my coast as well, just because geographically speaking, the coasts tend to not have forests that run right up alongside them. And when I'm putting in my trees, I want to make sure that I have some that are separated by white space, so you can see the peaks, and some that have darker black space in between the peaks and the trees that are behind it. And the reason that I want to do that is again to kind of create that illusion of depth. When things are lighter, they are closer to the eye, so they're perceived as being forward. When they're darker, our brain perceives them as being farther away. The only time this is really not true is extreme distances, which are hard to represent in this way on the map. If you ever go to the mountains, like we were talking earlier about Jasper, if you're really, really far away, the mountains are going to be paler and kind of smoky because then you're dealing with atmospheres and distance and other science things that I don't really understand. But if you're close up, your foreground is always going to be darker. So, David, don't worry about it. You're not distracting me. This is really awesome. I like having a conversation. I've never been to Montana. I've seen pictures. I have a couple of friends who are teaching at the University of Montana down there, and I live vicariously through their Instagram because it just looks so beautiful. I want to travel. I love traveling. It's one of my favorite things in the entire world. Getting the chance to draw in different places, I find that that can be just as amazing for me, and sometimes more amazing than taking photos when I go somewhere. I have a drawing that I did of one of the mountain ranges in Jasper when Gary and I were on a trip a couple of years ago with my friend Renaud from France. We took Renaud to Jasper because it had been years since he'd been, and I sat there while they walked to the top of the mountain, and I just drew the mountain range. And it's one of my favorite pictures that I've ever drawn because I have such good memories of just sitting there with Gary and drawing, and different tourists passing, coming around. I love that about being in a place. People find it really surprising to see an artist drawing in place, and so I end up having wonderful conversations. I was drawing when I was in Drumheller earlier this summer. That's another really cool place. If you're ever on the Canadian prairies in Alberta, Drumheller is a really epic dinosaur museum. And yeah, I was drawing at one of the observation decks, and I ended up having this conversation with a girl who was from England, who had just been accepted to art school. And she's like, I really am curious about your supplies, and like, what do you think about all this process? And it was a really wonderful experience. I hope I'm saying this right, but Paloa, you said hi, and Myrna told me so, so I'm saying hi back. How's it going? What are you doing with your day? David, you were saying that your 8-year-old is playing D&D with some older kids, that you're running demos. That's totally amazing. We play D&D here. I'm on an army base, so we actually have a bunch of people who come over. My husband DMs for us, and we play every Wednesday, so last night was game night. And it's been an amazing thing for me, both in terms of creativity. It's spawned a lot of art. I'm actually writing a novel based on our previous campaign because it had such a massive effect on me. But it's also been like the primary social thing since we've moved here. The base is really small, and I've had a very hard time finding work. And so it's hard to make friends when you don't have a lot of reasons to be out of your house, as if making friends as an adult wasn't hard enough already. So the D&D has been great because sure, it's people from Dave's work, but they've all been incredible. They're all nerds and into playing and really dedicated to being there. And that has just enriched my life so dramatically. I can't speak highly enough of it in terms of just giving me wonderful quality people to spend my time with, and also just prompting so much creativity. The maps that I do for my Patreon are maps of the world that I'm building for my novel. And it's really lovely to be able to have somewhere to share that work. Like, so often the creative process can be really isolating. It's way more fun if you have people to share it with, which is part of why doing these live streams is important to me. So it's really cool to be like, hey, Patreon, this is what I'm working on right now. It's a small community, but it's a lot of fun. I like getting the feedback. It's one more way to talk to people and to have that experience, right? And I am all for that. All right, so we have some hills, more hills up here. So let's make these ones smaller. And then there's maybe a few little ones up here. And then this is all forest. And I have some labels that I need to put into the forest. So let's do that first so I can work around them. Do. There's 2 in here. Just a second, I need to check my notes, guys. So they are 2 separate places. Okay, cool. So we're going to do Siglar's Den first. So we need a symbol for Siglar's Den. What are we going to do? Let's do like a little cave portal. Let me just double check where that is on the map. Sorry, I talk to myself a lot while I work. Alright, let's go here. So we'll do a little arch and put it on the ground. And make the outside stones. And make the inside black, except for that at the bottom. Perfect. So, Siglar's Den. Let us confirm spelling before we do this. Okay. Siglarr. Okay, cool. And then we have the old woods. Pardon me. Alright, so these are the 2 areas that needed to be labeled in here. So now we get to fill these in with more tiny little trees. So, let's do it. I am going to trade pens to a slightly larger one and get started. So again, we're going to start along this lower line at the bottom so that we can put the trees in behind it moving forward, and that creates our illusion of depth. And one of the things that I'm trying to do is to keep these trees a little bit different shape and size as I go, especially on this front line. That just helps randomize it a bit and give the impression of a living forest. If everything is all the same, that's cool. It creates a wonderful consistency. But I find that it loses some of the charm of the hand-drawn map. I don't know if that makes any sense to anyone else. I like the imperfections that come along with doing it. I don't know, I don't want to say not carefully, because like I'm definitely being careful, but making sure that it looks like a human did it, I guess. Imperfect. There's nothing wrong with imperfection. If you're waiting for perfection, you'll never get any work done. It's taken me years to figure that out, but it's very, very true. So you've been writing, hey David, for 3 years. Well, that makes me feel a bit better. I've been working on Halcyon for about a year now. I was on fire with it last year. I think I wrote close to 200,000 words last year. But it was also the only thing I was doing. Now that I'm working on the maps, my momentum has slowed with the story. But that's okay, because I got this going on, and this is also super cool. Thank you, Paulo. I appreciate that you're having fun. That's absolutely awesome. So one of the things that I want to do with putting trees into a dense forest is I want to make sure that we have this sense of rises and hills and falls, because that keeps things not flat and monotonous, right? So I'm going to come in with my pencil and I'm just going to work a couple of hills into where I think they would be based on existing tree lines. And that way I have ridges to follow as I'm putting stuff in, and that will help create the rises and falls. When I'm working around a tidal area like Siglar's Den, I just want to be sure that I'm leaving enough white space around there so that the eye is then again drawn to this darker area. It will help cue the reader of the map that there's something important going on there. And also, preserve the legibility of the writing. I've seen a lot of very wonderful maps by new map makers, and I consider myself a new map maker. I've only been doing this for about 6 months, where they've either used a really large pen for their writing, and it's creating problems because it's blocked into a space that's honestly too small for the writing, or they haven't left enough area around it for that to be preserved and legible. So I'm trying to avoid doing that. Given that I don't have very much experience putting labels on maps, I'm having to be quite cautious about it. David's asking me, how long have I been working on this map and why did I start in the northwest? So I start up here and go clockwise out of habit. It's because if I'm working in certain media, in anything, I've been drawing for a super long time, so these are ingrained habits. It smudges, right? Like I grew up doing graphite and chalk pastel, oil pastel, stuff like that. So I have a tendency to work in this direction because I'm right-handed, so it keeps my hand out of the way of what I'm working on. So that's kind of where that came from. Depending on like where I'm at with the map, if I'm feeling writer's block or artist's block, I guess, I'll move to different places, which is why this lobster is totally done, because I was like, you know what, I can handle doing a lobster right now. I don't want to mess up the rest of the map, but I can totally do the lobster. So that's why I go counterclockwise. This map I have been at for I haven't been tracking it very well. Somewhere probably approaching 10 hours? No, it can't be that little. I don't know because I had the restart, right? Like, I've been working on it for this one a couple of days now. The other one had quite a bit of time into it as well, but they kind of blur together in my brain. The average map has a tendency to take me about 30 hours all told between doing the rough work and doing the inking, and then if there's color on top of that, it depends on if it's watercolor or if it's Copic. Watercolor tends to be a tiny bit faster than Copic, although not typically by all that much. So this will be a watercolor map in the end, so it will be beautiful and colorful, and I'm really looking forward to that. So yeah. So again, going through and adding some areas of lightness and darkness in between my trees to kind of give that sense of space and everything being together. Sometimes when the edges of my forests look a little too perfect, I'll just make little tick marks and other kind of gentle fade out scribbles to give that impression of things not ending quite so abruptly. And then as I'm working, I'm realizing that a lot of these trees down here are too light because I was using a much finer pen. So just going to go back and darken some of those. I do that a lot with maps. I kind of get one section done and then I'll come back to it a day or so, or sometimes just even a couple minutes later and go, oh yeah, that didn't quite do what I wanted it to do. And then see if I can fix it. That is the challenge of working directly in pen. If you make a catastrophic mistake right at the beginning, congratulations, you're doing it over. But I've been working with pen for my entire life. Like I grew up drawing with ballpoints on notebook paper because that's what I had. So I have a lot of confidence with pen. It's probably my most familiar and preferred medium. So that confidence really helps. I have a very good idea of what I'm capable of and how it needs to go down in order to get me the effect that I want. And really that just comes from a lot of time in, a lot of practice. David, what's it like designing your own RPG system? Like, are you doing your own mechanics? Because that's the part that I struggle with. Like, I like to run homebrew when I get the chance, and I've been contemplating the idea of running a homebrew in the world that I'm building for my novel, just because I think that'd be fun. Pardon me, guys, I've got a frog. I've been sick for the last couple weeks. I was hoping that I wasn't going to cough during the stream. But I'm terrified of, like, trying to create a homebrew system with my own mechanics. Like, I'm currently using a really loose D&D 5e framework for my stuff because that's the system that I understand the best. And I don't really love algebra as entertainment, so, like, 2e is just annoying for me. But I think I've seen people design systems that are so cool. Like, I've played with the Microscope world building system. I've played with Fate. I've played some GURPS. I really want to try something with Dungeon World. I think that's exciting. But I haven't really got the brain, I think, for developing a mechanical system of my own. Paulo, scared about the pen? Is that what you mean? About working just straight in pen? I just want to shout out to Myrna for being my moderator again. She's amazing. Goes back to that whole community thing. We're 200 kilometers apart, and the magic of the internet means that we can support each other with our projects, which is amazing. Yeah, I can completely get that. Do you draw in pencil? David, you're a physicist. I love brains that can deal with physics. I am so not a physics person. Man. I have some envy. Yeah, working in the pen is a lot like math. You're totally right. David was saying that the pen can be scary for him too, but he keeps telling himself it's like math. You make errors to learn. I have screwed up so many things in my life that are terrible, but you learn and you carry on and you just don't punish yourself for the mistakes, right? Yeah, I hear you about the erasing, Paulo. I totally do. I spend a lot of time erasing as well. Until I started getting into pen, one of the things that I've had to try to really train myself out of, I'm a terrible perfectionist, or I was, actually. I should say I'm a recovering perfectionist. And I would spend so long perfecting like one line that it would really prevent me from getting anything accomplished. And I was very hard on myself if things didn't turn out the way that I wanted them to. And so one of the things that I started doing, let me just get to a page that's not my map, is I'd start like scribbling a shape until I got the shape that I wanted. And then be like, okay, cool, I like that one. And then go back in with my pen and kind of solidify what line I really loved in there, the shape that I really wanted out of all of that. And then I'd go in and like do whatever I wanted to do and just kind of play around until I got what I wanted. And by forcing myself to work in pen, I got used to letting myself see the lines and just be like, those lines are okay. They're not the ones I want, but they're fine. And that was really, really cool. You're a theoretical chemist, Paulo? What? I'm surrounded by brilliant people this morning. Do you know how exciting this is? Thanks, David. Um, Creating in media is really a weird thing that I don't know, always done it, I guess. Helena, hard sciences, ancient Near Eastern philologist. Cuneiform tablets with pen, but that requires no creativity. No, but that requires a ton of skill, darling. Um, so I have a background in cultural and linguistic anthropology, and I have a master's in religious studies. So you're kind of sort of speaking my language here, Helena. That sounds fascinating. Where's everyone located, hey? Sound off. Let me know where you are. So I think I've made it clear I'm in Canada, in Alberta, snowy wonderland of our fine country. Helena is in Berlin. I have always wanted to go to Germany. I have family from there that I have never had the chance to go and meet. So that is on my list for sure. Paulo, you're in Portugal. I absolutely love the architecture in your country. I've done a lot of reading, especially on like Portuguese churches. It's so different from what we have in Canada. I absolutely am amazed by it. Oh man, you guys, this feels so awesome. I'm so excited right now. Oh, and there's coffee. You guys, this is such a perfect morning. I am so excited. So excited. Paula, you cover almost all the periods. Did I miss something in the chat here? Just a second. I'm going to try to scroll up. Time spans. Oh, yeah, yeah, for sure. That's amazing. Well, and like one of the things about architecture is it tells you so much about what was going on in the culture of the place at the time. I'm really close to Edmonton, Alberta, and there's a range of architecture in that city that, I mean, it's great that there's a large span, but it ranges from like the Baroque of our legislature building, which is the only what I think of as like classically European building in the city, to like 70s brutalism where it's post-war and everybody's broke and it's all corners and straight angles and super boring facades. I was super fortunate to be able to go to France in 2005. One of my best friends is there, and we were able to arrange a chance to meet. He was able to show me some of the country, and I fell so in love with the atmosphere of the place because it just looked like people cared about their architecture, if that makes any sense. Like having a beautiful environment was a priority for them. And I I sometimes feel like we don't prioritize making beautiful places to live here as much as we could. And I think people are happier in beautiful places. I think it genuinely contributes to a sense of well-being and social pride, which I think if you have some social pride, then perhaps less damaging forms of pride become less important. I don't know. Social theory. It's a thing I do. You're in Michigan, David. Sweet. Which college are you teaching at? That was always my goal. Before I met Dave, my plan was to go on to my PhD and teach. And then I met Dave, and that was kind of like, all right, not doing my PhD right away. I'm gonna follow you wherever you're going. I don't regret it. It's been a huge adjustment in what I thought my life was gonna look like, but as corny as it sounds to say, he's completely worth it for me. Um, I find that life experience, it sounds corny again, but it happens for a reason, and I'm better for it, even though I've ended up in some really unexpected places. We meet again, tiny trees. Do, do, do. Sorry guys, the cough, I don't mean it. Paulo, are you on your way? Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. This was awesome. I'm so excited that we got to know each other a tiny bit. I hope you can come hang out when we do this again. And enjoy the rest of your day, okay? Take care. David, you went to school at U of S, hey? I was at U of R. Lovely. So yeah, you're super familiar with where I am. Whereabouts in BC is your wife from? Oh, your wife went to U of S. Yeah, no, that's cool. Spud gun. Dexter, is that you? Tell me who you are. Prince Rupert. That's beautiful country up there. So beautiful. I haven't spent a lot of time up in that area. Are you familiar with like Tassus, BC on the island, Campbell River area? Pardon me, guys. I'm so sorry. Met in Mexico. That's another place I haven't been to. I love it when there's a great story when people meet, though. I think that especially when you can tell it really well. I have a really good story about how Dave and I met, and how he tells it and how I tell it are radically different, which I think is kind of the nature of two people having their own involvements in an interaction. I think I'm the more comic teller. He's a pretty no nonsense kind of person, which, you know, suits him quite well. But move to BC in a heartbeat. You and me both, my dear. You and me both. Dave and I have been talking a lot about maybe building a tiny home. We like to build things together. He's a woodworker as a hobby, and I just like tinkering, so that can be really fun for me. And I would love to drop it in the Clearwater area, so that we're close enough to the Alberta border to still be able to see family and stuff like that. I have really fond memories of Clearwater from when I was a kid. Alright, so we have a bit of a forest. We have all of our lettering in place. Brian! Hi! How's it going? Let's get a few more trees on this hill. Maybe a couple down here. So normally I do this for an hour, but I'm really enjoying everybody hanging out and talking, so I'm going to keep going until people say, you know, hey Shay, we're tired of you. And Myrna has generously agreed to hang out until I am done, which is amazing. Sorry guys, this cough, I'm just going to do that and have some coffee. May have to call it just because of the breathing. How's your day going, Brian? And where are you from? We've had a couple people from all over the map today. It's been lovely. Alright, details on the hills. I think we're going to add some stippling to these. I'm starting my day, Brian, so like things are pretty good for me. It's about 10:30 a.m. here, and I've been having a lovely morning. I was saying at the beginning of the live stream that I just got some news that I've been literally waiting for 7 years. And I got it about 10 minutes before I started streaming, so it's one of those mornings that the world is just glorious. Yeah, he was saying that the details on the map, they are that small. Yeah, they really are. I think I'm a bit of a sucker for punishment, truth be told. I love how it looks though. There's something about density of line that just creates almost like a velvety texture, and I'm really, really into that. It does take quite some time though. Like I've had some people who have asked me to work for them and be like, "Oh, I can't believe you're spending like, 30 hours on a map kind of thing." And I'm like, "You could do it." It will take you a while, but yeah, that's how it would be. David, is the water done with watercolor paint? Yes, it is. And I can actually show you which one I'm using because it's my new current favorite thing, and I'm all about showing supplies. So it is this, which is the Ecoline Ready to Walk watercolor. So it's a liquid. It's plug and play. So you can get right in there with a brush and make it happen. It dilutes just like a watercolor. You can drop soap and rubbing alcohol and salt into it just like a standard watercolor. You just don't need to keep mixing it to the consistency. So I love the color. I'm quite obsessed with it. I got it in my box from Well Inked Box, which is a subscription service that I am incredibly fond of. I wouldn't have run into it without it showing up, so I've actually started investing in that line because the color saturation is just beautiful. And those are the watercolors that I'll be using to finish this map. So once we have all of the inking done, what's going to happen is this is going to get colored in with watercolor as well. So, pardon me, it's going to be very fun. Brian, you're from the Netherlands. Right on. The gentleman who commissioned this map is also from the Netherlands. So I feel kind of special that I have two of you there. That's awesome. So alright, we got a forest. Let me go back to my notes here. Notes, notes, notes. Alright. We are going up for roads. Okay, well, we better put those in before I, lose it here. Oh, and I missed a town. Guys, I missed a town. Alright, better get that in. And it's a small town, so I have a symbol devised for a small town already. So we're going to put that in. And this is why it's better if I actually look at what I'm doing. I'm not complaining though. This is amazing. Merendique. Let me just confirm that that's the same spelling on my English list. There's a place on this map called Sea Moose, and it makes me so excited because I absolutely love moose. It's the largest human town. Okay, cool. So let's add a little bit more town down here. Turn it into a city. There we go. That's better. Alright. M-E-R-E. N-D-I-K-E. And there is an accent aigu on that first E. Fantastic. Alright, now we gotta put some roads in. Let us put roads in. So, we have a road going from the Erasmus Bridge. And it comes down around this peninsula, comes up along the coast. It's gonna come down through this forest and around the way to Merendique. Fabulous. And then we have a road going up along that forest line. Do I have a name for it somewhere? Sorry guys, I said I was going to have to do some mousing this session, so I just need to do that. There's something there, but no specific label. Alright, I will have to ask Dexter. Let us make it a dot. And that will remind me to come back to it. Alright, roads. So, we're going to come up through this forest. We're going to come up to the edge of that forest. And then there's a road that comes over here. Comes down here. To this fork in the road. And then this road comes up. Around here. To there. And what is that? That is Prince Hill. And Prince Hill is a very important town currently under the rule of a wolf. Well, that's exciting. Let us make it a tower with a tall spire. And then we will give some smaller buildings, little peaked roofs on each side. And let's give the tower a window and give the smaller buildings doors. And then put it on a hill and add a couple more hills. Let's put some grass. And then let's give it a label. What did we call it again? Prince Hill? Prince Hill. All right. And then going back to this one. And we have Underrock up here. So let us draw a rock. Rocks are kind of the same deal as drawing a mountain for me. You kind of create your outside shape and then you fill in your lines on the inside. And then you add the hatching. So I need my thinner pen because that hatching needs to be much finer. And then let's get a label on it. Underrock. One R, two R, two R. And then we need the road from Prince Hill to Underrock. Perfect. And then we have another road going up here to Val. So let's get that in place. Tell me about Val, Master List. Where are you? An elf town. How do we represent an elf town? Let's do this. So Val is here. Let's do it with a thinner pen. We'll create a tall, thin tower. And another tall, thin tower. Put an arch between them. Alright, let's put a ground on it. V-A-A-L. Alright, and then we had a highway that went from Val along the coast, along the forest edge, down to Prince Hill. Now, am I missing any other major landforms? There is a clearing in that forest, and there is a town. Town is not labeled, however. Alright, so let's put a dot there so that I remember, and we will leave that and come back to it. Brian, good news? Oh, the best news. Sorry, I wasn't watching the chat for a second. The best news. I have been waiting on this news for 7 years. It changes a ton of stuff for me. It's the resolution of something that has been a millstone around my neck forever. So it's just incredibly exciting. And what's even better is it's my birthday on Sunday. So it's just like, yay, I get awesome news for my birthday. This is so fantastic. Sea Moose. Moose with the O's crossed out. Are you making a Monty Python reference, sir? Because if you are my hero. A moose once bit my sister. For those of you who don't know Monty Python, you should really go watch Monty Python on the Holy Grail because it's amazing. It is so good. Alright, so this forest also has an unlabeled town in it. Dexter, darling, we may need to get some labels going on here. What map? Give me this map. Oh, there we go. Okay, perfect. So this is Valinor. And this is the Rustwood. Alright, now we can start filling that in with teeny little trees. It really is great timing, isn't it? Thank you. It feels strange because it's been such a long time coming that it almost feels surreal, if that makes any sense. I had kind of almost given up hope that we were ever going to get anywhere with it. So as terrible as that sounds, it delights me so much. So I get to drive to Edmonton tomorrow, and I get to handle the last few details, and oh man, I'm so excited. So we're building up another dense forest over here. So again, starting with the southern tree line. Myrna just asked me, does this mean you're coming to Art Jam? Dude, I think it does. I do think it does, because if I gotta come into the city anyway, I might as well stay and draw things with you, because that would be awesome. So the Art Jam that we're talking about, we're trying to get a once-a-month drawing group off the ground in Edmonton where people can just bring whatever they're working on and hang out together in a coffee shop and work. Because as I was saying earlier in the live stream, sometimes creative work can be incredibly isolating. You spend a lot of time working, but there's not really a good way to always share that with people. And some people also just, they work better with other people around, right? Like, it's more fun when you can share the process, and you're kind of sometimes more accountable. If there's other people there that are like, hey, where's your stuff? Why aren't you working on it? I was originally thinking that I wasn't going to be able to go this month because it's a 200-kilometer drive, and sometimes that's not an easy thing to coordinate into my schedule. But I have to go anyway to deal with the last details of this wonderful news, so that might be an epic way to celebrate the last details of my wonderful news. Go hang out with some people that I love and care about and draw things, which will be amazing. So amazing. Guys, today is just so good. Man, I'm so excited. I'm also super grateful that my dog is just chilling out under my desk. Sometimes he is very rambunctious while I am trying to stream, and at 110 pounds, that's a lot of rambunctious. So it's nice when he is mellow and just wants to work. Well, wants to let me work. I don't think he totally understands what I'm doing, but that's okay. Alright, I forgot to put my heels in here. Let's put my heels in here. Pardon me. Let's go over here. Another one up here, down there. And then up here. Yeah, that makes sense. Alright. So it's 11:45 a.m. my time, and I'm thinking that I will probably sign off at 11. Just because I'm starting to cough more, and I don't want to do that in everyone's ear. It's just rude. But let's hang out for the last couple minutes and enjoy time together, because I really am enjoying this. It's so nice to have people around. If people have like Instagrams and stuff that they want me to follow, sound off in the comments. I will go add you. Let me know. I'm really probably the most active on Instagram out of everywhere. It's a platform that I really enjoy just because it's so visual. There are so many amazing artists going on Instagram right now. It's just joyful every time I open it up. So many tiny trees, but that's okay. We like them. Oh, I guess if I'm talking about everyone else's Instagram, my Instagram is monocled octopus, same as my YouTube call sign. You're more than welcome to come track me down if you feel like it. I post updates about what I'm working on as I'm working there. Also random pictures of my adorable dogs, so if you're into giant German Shepherds, then that could be a thing. I'm also, if you didn't find me through Facebook, Monocled Octopus on Facebook. I try to post there as well. I'm really good about letting people know if I'm live streaming through that Facebook page, so if you want to know that that's coming, then definitely just tag along there. Man, this cough. right, so we have the rustwood. Oh, Brian, I totally hear you about the time sinks, for sure. Brian was saying that Facebook and forums can be such enormous time sinks, and I hear that. Like, one of the more interesting parts of trying to become artistic is like artistic in a public way, I guess is a better way to phrase that, is I have to spend a lot more time on social media, and I'm I'm kind of reticent, I guess. Like, I'm not really shy. I'm good with people, but I'm pretty heavily introverted. So smaller groups are better for me. So like sometimes getting into a group where I'm super comfortable, like I'm part of an excellent map making group on Facebook. I have to sometimes catch myself and be like, okay, you can't go through every single post that's been made in the last 24 hours. This group is 800 people large. You need to get to work. So I have lost entire mornings hanging out on the map group sometimes. I mean, nothing wrong with that. There's some incredibly talented people in there. But when you have your own work to do, it's kind of a thing. Let's put a couple hills on the outside of the rustwood. And then one over here. And just a couple dots to soften that a little bit. A little bit more trees coming off this side. Let's not block the road because that would be bad. Some more trees over here. Yes, I am digging that. I think we're going to add a little bit of texture along this road here. A little bit up here. Alright. Let's double check my spec maps here. Yeah, there's nothing really going on there. So, let's just add a bit of texture on this peninsula. Kind of integrate that into the map. Maybe we'll put a small forest over here. Now, is there a name for that bridge? Let us check that. Silpha, is that a bridge name? I will have to check with Dexter. Alright. Let's go back to this one. We will draw the bridge in just before I forget, because that's important. Alright, so we have some ruins up in this forest. Oh wait, this forest goes up. I have not yet done this one. Alright, that's a little better. Perfect. Let's maybe put some stippling down here. Alright, we're getting close to the end here, so I'm going to pull down the phone, apologize the shaky view, and we'll have a closer look at what we were working on. So, pardon the camera shake. Let's see if I can do some better light. Like I said, I'm not really technologically adept. So, looking around here. You guys are talking about Monty Python. That's totally awesome. Yes, I highly recommend The Holy Grail and The Life of Brian. All right. I'm going to poke this up back on the stand. And move this out of the way again. Oh, come on now. Did I break it? I totally broke it. There we go. All right. I think I am going to call it there for a minute. I'm going to see if I can jump onto YouTube on my computer and see the chat. We'll just experiment with that for a second, okay? Because I don't know if that's even possible. Do-do-do. Did you know there's another monocled octopus on YouTube? I did not. Interesting. Hey, I can see the live stream. Neat. Haha, I got to type a comment. Now I'm excited. Hee. Alright, so that takes us to 11 o'clock. So I'm gonna sign off. And I'm gonna do this again next Thursday, same time. I try to do it every week, barring feeling like I'm a victim of the plague. So I will post again on Facebook and on Instagram next week when I'm ready to kick off. And then if you feel like you're able to join me and come hang out, I would welcome that. I think that would be totally awesome. Helena, you're totally welcome. It was absolutely amazing to have you guys here. This made my day so much to be able to have such an excellent morning and share it with awesome people. So I appreciate everyone having a conversation. Appreciate people just kind of rolling with me. It was super fun. So I hope everyone has a great day or a great night, depending on where you are in the sphere of the world. And hopefully we can do this again. All right. Take care, okay? Bye.